Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namaskar to all the PGurus audience. As I always maintain that it is a delight to talk to PGurus audience because many of them give very valuable suggestions in the comments box and other thing. I'm very thankful to you. Today we will have a look at the global conflicts and how they are changing, how the world is getting reshaped due to these conflicts. The primary hypothesis is global conflicts are not anymore nation-state conflicts, but they are civilizational conflicts. As early as 1990s, Samuel Huntington wrote about it, and at that time there were a lot of criticisms and other things. But 9/11 and so many other type of developments has proved some of the assertions or some of the hypotheses he made in his book Clash of Civilisations. Some basic facts. In 1990, if you go back, not some 30 years before, the G7, I'm sure all of you would be heard about a group of 7 nations. They had 52% of the share of the global GDP. More than half of the share of global GDP in 1990. And the other major emerging market, and of that 4 of them are very major: India, China, Brazil and Indonesia in terms of demography. They had something like 1/3. The other countries had smaller sizes. And emerging markets 1/3 and the emerged markets are 52%. But if you come to pre-COVID, around 1916, 1917, you find that G7 share in the global GDP has come down to 1/3. And that of these emerging markets have gone up to 51%. There is a dramatic shift which has taken place. And the fall in the G7 is, it's a secular fall. And it's not something which comes down, goes up, another thing. It's a continuous fall. So G7 is in an acute crisis. And post this COVID, the situation would have worsened only for them compared to the emerging market. And that's why the Angus Madison, in his profound study of the global economy from the Christian era till 2000, he mentioned that India and China are not emerging markets. They are re-emerging markets. They are retrieving the position where they were. That was his assertion. And G7, of course, is now expanded to G20. I think everybody knows in organization that when you are in crisis, the best thing, if you are a group working on something, you increase the size of the group. So the per capita blame will come down. If you are doing extremely well, you reduce the size of the group. So this is something very standard management technique. So G7 has become G20. But still, G7 is in the main dining table. Countries like India or China are all not allowed to sit in the main table. A small stool is put and then you sit in the side of the table. That's a position. And G7 still thinks that they are in a position to dictate terms and set the agenda and that. Further, if you take on a purchasing power parity basis, the top 4 countries in the world today are USA, number 1, China, India and Japan. These are the 4 countries which are on purchasing power parity basis, top 4 countries. In other words, if you had studied in school in the beginning of last century, people would have told you should study about Britain, France, US and USSR. These are the countries which are very important for the next 30-40. Today, if you are studying in schools all over the world, they talk about USA, China, India and Japan. India is 3rd in terms of the purchasing power parity basis. And sooner or later, maybe in next couple of years, China will be more than USA even in nominal term, leave alone in purchasing power parity. Nominal term. In other words, it will cross 20 trillion very easily. And China will become the number 1 country, both in purchasing power parity basis as well as in nominal term. In other words, China will emerge as a superpower in this part of the around the 30s and after that for quite a number of decades. This has been shifting sands of global history, which we should know. If you go back in time around 15th and 16th century, Spain, of course, in those days it was not called just as Spain, Iberian Peninsula. Spain was one of the leading countries. Then 16th century, it was a Portugal century because of their navigational skills. And they went all around the world and then tried to conquer. And 16th, that is some 4 centuries before. Today, I do not know many people will be able to spot Portugal in the world map. It was such a major giant of a country in 16th century. Everybody Portugal used to set the agenda and Portugal used to be followed, and many people in Europe, mainland Europe, other places, they learnt Portuguese and other. They also established a lot of these colonies in Southern American countries. Then 17th became the Dutch. Then 17th and part of the 17th and 18th were French. We are not talking exactly of the full century. Some later portion of the century, other country began to dominate. And 19th, of course, was that of the UK, and 20th is that of the USA, and 21st is that of Asia, India and China. This is how the world history can be looked at. Of course, Belgium also played a role around the 17th and 18th. So small a country. It was one of the cruelest countries of which had colonies in Africa. Next was Portugal in cruelty, then Dutch, then became the French, and then relatively UK was not as cruel as these countries were. Anyhow, that's a separate issue. So 21st is that of India and China. That's the type of a thing. Now, many of you maybe heard about it. Westphalian consensus in 1648. There was 30-year war, 80-year war, another thing, where the Catholic Church as well as other type of smaller kingdoms of Europe were fighting. Some of that is between you and me is a major debacle or lies. They will say 80-year war. The war would have been fought only for 40, 50 years. But like our Bhutto famously told, we will have a 1,000-year war with India and other. Anyhow, these numbers have to be taken with a sort of a bucket of salt. Anyhow, that after that, all that war, they came into some agreement in Westphalia. It's Europe. It's called a Westphalian Consensus, 1648. Basically, what it says is non-interference in the sovereignty of individual nation. The first time, sovereignty of nation was recognized, and it was told that others will not interfere, including the church in those days. And later, post 20th century, 50s, US began to meddle with many countries. What they thought are communist-oriented or communist-leaning countries and other. And then later on, UK also joined, and then they went into several countries to rectify the countries like Vietnam, or to avoid dangers from countries like Iraq. And they told Iraq has got chemical weapons, and all these the Washington Post and New York Times and the Economist, which are followers government policy, they also told, and I think I did mention, they didn't find even one bottle of hydrochloric acid in Iraq, but they left Iraq in a mess. Anyhow, in 1999, Tony Blair, previous Prime Minister of UK, he gave a speech in Chicago wherein he clearly enunciated that the Westphalian Consensus doesn't exist anymore. There is nothing called sovereignty of nation. It is up to us, you understand. US, us mean the white skin, who are considering themselves to be the most civilized, to interfere in the affairs of other countries and then set agenda in terms of usual democracy, civilization, and all this. So that idea of sovereign countries non-interference has been given a go by after this Tony Blair speech in 1999, and we find in this century quite a number of countries have been occupied, and quite a number of countries have been try to be modified according to the Western norms of functioning and other. In the meantime, we should also recall or remember that they are waging a war for some 120 square kilometer area or something called Jerusalem from period 1 or period 0, what you may call it. And the three brothers, the eldest brother consider it to be the holiest places. Other two brothers are also not leaving it, and this is going on. In the last 20 centuries, approximately 500 million people have been killed for this small area of land, which each one of them consider holy. And holiest of the holy lands, 500 million have been killed. And even today, it continues. And these are the civilizations, or these are the people who talk about, advise others about having peace and having normalcy and all this. Whole thing is bunkum. Now what has happened is the third brother, who is most volatile and the most what one can call aggressive, of the lot, he is extremely active all over the world. Some 52 countries have formed an organization of Islamic countries, and then they try to preach or they try to tell others the do's and don'ts and other thing, including India. So over a period of time, the individual country sovereignty is not considered as much as important as the what civilization you follow. This is the most important. So broadly, we have the Christian civilization, which is followed by the white countries. Within that, there are divisions like Roman Catholics and born-again Christians and other thing, and Islamic followers. And we have the Hindu, Buddhist, Jains, and other type of followers. And the deserters, what I call them, those who came from the desert, they are, well identified civilization, or they consider themselves to be well identified. If not civilization, they are well identified religion at least. And they have the concept of blasphemy and other thing. We all know about it. And they genuinely feel others of the world would be benefited by following their methods and their systems. That is true for both actually. For instance, I will give an example. Armenia, many of you may have heard about it. Armenia had a massive genocide conducted by Turks in the beginning of the century. Actually, the Jewish genocide is second only, even though that is being so much highlighted. The Armenian genocide was the first one, and Turks doesn't want even to talk about. You will be surprised when thousands of years before the Christians first went into Armenia, they had a Krishna temple. The first thing they did was to destroy that temple, and later they established their own religion, and that. Much later, as I told you, the Christians were put into the massive massacre by the Turkish groups. This is what is. So this is not something exclusively only to Islam. The other Christians are also very much against pagans, and like our Portuguese had in Goa the Inquisition of killing people and other. So this is what has happened is the West, or what you may call the white, one would mention it, because of some of the developments, they could resist the church and conduct some activities. For instance, they could declare that some scientist that world is a globe and it is going around the sun. He was put inside for telling that by the church, but there were still people who were resisting and who were trying to talk in terms of some of these modern things, which incidentally, the idea that the world is a globe and it is moving around the sun was known to the Hindu civilization long time before. And that was carried by the Arabians and like this mathematics and so many things. And this Islamic civilization, if you can call it civilization at all, they themselves say who they, and 𝙒𝙗𝙗, one of the major thinkers, was settled in US a couple of years before you mentioned. He is no more, I think. I'm not very... He mentioned that hardly some 100 books have been translated from other languages into Arabic. You can imagine their level of competence or their level of understanding and others. And many others have also pointed out practically nothing has been invented by the Islamic groups. They have only invaded various other parts of the world and then tried to conquer and then tried to. They had some what one can call the mausoleums and their graveyards. For instance, they ruled India for a reasonably long period, maybe around 300 years, and they did not, have any significant addition to the Indian thing. Existing, actually, they destroyed many of them anyhow. So they have never known as inventors or originators of any great thinking and ideas. And the other side, the whites over a period of time, particularly in the latter part of the 20th century, they have become agnostic. In Europe, when they are asked to tick, they tick NONE. We don't believe in any of the religion. Northern Europe particularly, the church-going habits and other thing is practically died. Not many are enthusiastic. And the problem is, quite a number of these Islamic people have settled in these countries and they are now dictating terms. So that's why I call it Eurobia. So the major conflict which is taking place, for instance, if you go to the Africa, in Nigeria, very recently, maybe 2 weeks before or something, in a Catholic church actually, the Islamic terrorist entered and then shot dead 50 people at point blank. There is another group, Boko Haram, they call themselves in Nigeria. They kidnap children and they kill people in a bulk. It's not one or two. individual terrorism. They kill 100, 150 and others. So much of it, of course, some people explain it as a tribal animosity and other thing, but it goes under the garb of either Islam or Christianity. Nigeria is 50-50. So they want to establish an Islamic caliphate in Nigeria as well as in adjacent places. Now Burkina Faso and nearby Mali and other places, there is a huge war is going on. Not many people are even covering it because it doesn't involve a white man. You see, unless something involves a white man, European or American, it's not a global issue as of today. But their position is declining. We should recognize that. India is the number 4, as I told you. Nominal term also, it is going above Britain and France, and it might even touch Germany soon. It's not such a very difficult. So, as of now, they set the agenda or they set the terms, who the white. But sooner or later, they have to give way for the yellow. That is going to happen. And the brown has to decide whether it has to be with yellow or not. Brown is under great threat for 2 reasons. First and foremost is ours is not a unified religion like Abrahamic religion. You can't just call ours as a, in that sense of the term, in the sense we are not congregating type, we are not having concept of blasphemy, and our whole ethos is multiplicity, and then we are polymorphic. We are not polytheist, we are polymorphic. In the sense we believe in one God in different forms, so we are polymorphic. So that is a type of for instance, for a long period of time, people used to ask, how did this civilization got into this issue? One is, this civilization was always debating, discussing and searching. We were always searching inside. You see, the European model is to conduct wars against nature. Almost all their major activities stemmed out of destroying nature. After doing all that, now they are talking about, we have to preserve ecology, we have to preserve another. Even to wipe their bottom, they would have destroyed, I am sure, millions and billions of trees. So that is the best. The other one, the third brother, he has always been involved in terms of fight against other people. He wanted to increase the number, he wanted to increase the geography, he wanted to increase. So one is fight against nature, other is fight against other human beings. The third, ours, is fight within ourselves. In the sense, we never wanted to have any fight with nature or other human being. Our search, our conflict is within ourselves. The relationship between Jivatma and Paramatma. How does Jivatma get separated? How does it get merged into Paramatma? All this. And debate and discussion are our core values. Starting with Adi Shankara's discussion vis-a-vis the Mandan Mishra. And even recently somebody told me, what is this one sect of Vaishnavites in Tamil Nadu wants to have one type of a thing for elephant. What symbol has to be put on its forehead. Another type of Vaishnavites want it to be different. For this 200 years, they have been debating and discussing because that has got some underlying philosophical connotations and other. I only told, look, 200 years they are discussing only. They never had a belt bomb to finish off the others. This is very, very important. So the basic system here, it never understood. Indian culture, Hindu culture never understood that there can be other belief system which think that it has to finish off those who don't follow or those who don't subscribe to that belief. This idea was not there at all here. So they were not prepared to face such type of a belief system. So there is a huge difference in terms of so the polymorphic will have multiplicity of flowers, multiplicity of what one can call plants in its garden. So the civilizational crisis, civilizational conflict, which is going to continue for more time, not with nation states or anything. It's required for India, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains and various other type of a non-aggressive and Asian-rooted civilization to come together. And that's the only way in which they can meet the challenges. Second is they have to recognize and realize the other civilizations are not very soft or anything. Except, as I told you, the European brand of Christianity, which is slowly withering away. And they are waiting, I'm sure the Islam is waiting to construct a caliphate in Europe. I wouldn't be surprised if it is headquartered in Paris or in Belgium. So they have become they just want their pubs to be working and music to be performed, and demographically also they are declining significantly, particularly the northern part of Europe is phenomenally, it's less than one. Some of the countries reproductive rate is. So it is required for Asian rooted civilization to combine together. As of now, Japan is acting as a poodle of white thing, but that will go away. We have to get our things together. Our umbilical cords are tied to the West, to the white man. We have to recognize that very clearly. We have to understand that we have to build new institutions globally, and we should join with China to build new global institutions like United Nations and various other institutions which are not G7 dominated. G7 role is, as I told you, declining. Very important. And not only that, we have to establish a world order where our multiplicity of our flowers which are blossoming is continued to be protected. We don't have to become Abrahamized or homogenized in order to deal with this, and this is a very major challenge for Indian civilization. In other words, the diversity of Hindus have to be protected. At the same time, it has to be protected against the onslaught of these violent cultures. Of course, the fault lines within India is very well known. We are a democracy, we are not something, and that will be exploited, particularly by the whites. Whites are in desperate situation because they are declining. Declining civilizations are most dangerous. You go back in history, 16th century, 17th century, all, and Dutch were declining, they became very violent. French were declining because declining one, they can't even understand that they are declining. South Korea had a caste system, Taiwan had a caste system, China mainland had a caste system, Hong Kong had a. These are all just some reasons to be given, and internally people are jumping. And within India, there are a large number of people who are not fully dedicated to and understand the India and Indian culture. For instance, anytime when some Western fellows criticize, immediately these people jump. Oh, we have been criticized, and what if? Let them criticize, and some of them get funds and other things. So we are going to have a marathon type of a issue and problems, massive. One is those who are internally settled but not comfortable about the idea of India which is emerging. Second is, we are the only country, you will be shocked to know, that where our students in foreign universities agitate against India, and as one Swamiji correctly observed, the Chinese students don't agitate against China. Japanese, so many other countries' students, they study there and then come back. Not Indian students. Most virulently and violently opposed to India are people of Indian origin who are outside India. So this is another type of and they exploit the fault lines like anything. All sort of rumors, all sort of wrong things are told. Many of the smaller local issues are made global. For instance, one church window is broken, immediately it will become a global issue, and immediately so many people will jump into that. Amnesty will issue a statement, US civil rights group will issue statements, or global can be made into local. Some pastor told, if I recall correctly, in US television, that prophet is mentally imbalanced person, which is the most idiotic type of a statement to be made. But that white fellow pastor made that statement. In a town called Bhiwandi in Maharashtra, some 7 people were killed by a rioting mob. It has got nothing to do with people in India or people. So some of the global are converted into local. So we have a huge type of a challenge. One is to recognize that we are a Hindu country, absolutely no two opinion about it, in which everyone can flourish and live. We are polymorphic. Let me repeat it again. Multiplicity of flowers can blossom here, but we have to explicitly recognize we are a Hindu country and deal with this civilizational conflict, which is going to rage for the next 30-40 years. Until and unless all these deserters understand that this is not taking them anywhere. And in that, we have to be very, very close and alert with Buddhist, Confucianism and others in China. Let's not again and again think China is a communist country. China is not. Hardly 10% is 11% is party members, and they themselves do not consider them as, they say that they are a socialist market economy with Chinese characteristics, whatever it means. Today, only places communism is talked about. North Korea, where these media, television says that every week that roly-poly, fat fellow comes out and sees on one of those rockets. And the other one place where communism is talked about is outside JNU. There is a Daba. You can go there in the morning and see. So let's very clearly understand the conflict is between civilizations, and the Asian civilizations, Buddhists, Jains, and Hindus, and various other, combined with other type of civilizations flourishing or flourished in, should come together. Thank you very much.